gambling industry is projecting towards $1 trillion industry by the end of the decade. Currently, it's around 700 billion. And you would be surprised how big the online is of it. You want to guess?
Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of Fumo, the Future Money Podcast with Gaurav and Ronit. Brought to you by our friends at CFT, sponsored by XVC Tech, and supported by the MENA FinTech Association. Today's special guest is Gaurav? Who?
I have no idea. You tell me.
Emil, thank you so much for joining us. You've flown in from Stockholm, right?
Yes.
And we've just been talking before we went live about all my wonderful experiences in Sweden. Love the country. Oh, no, germinated. So Emil, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're in the online gambling market.
Yes.
Is this something I can talk to my mum about? Because that doesn't sound particularly... Can you talk to your mum about this? What is online gambling?
Well, the thing is, if you talk about gambling, a lot of people out there don't really think certain products that they're actually consuming are gambling, like the lottery, scratch cards.
Everyone plays the lottery.
Everybody plays the lottery, or everybody buys a scratch card.
Yeah.
If you ask those people, they're like, no, this is not gambling.
It isn't gambling. I do it.
It is.
If you do it, it's not gambling, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in the UAE, I do it
It's
here.
entertainment.
No,
what is? Well, how would you define
Gambling.
lotteries?
I would call it a game of chance.
Game of chance.
I wouldn't call it gambling per se.
Game of skill.
It sounds a bit too strict and tough when you call it gambling.
That could be our episode title, Game of Chance.
Game of chance.
Game of Chance.
There you go.
Game of Chance. So, gambling.
Yeah, so I mean, the gambling has been for such a long time. And before online, obviously everything was offline. You had land-based casinos, you had these lotteries, scratch cards.
Yeah.
And then, with the internet coming and gambling going online, which created the term iGaming.
When did that happen?
Well, late 90s.
When was the internet? Right.
There were fax machines when I started working.
Did you gamble from fax machines?
I don't know.
I bet you could. I bet you could send a fax to do like a horse racing bet or something.
Interesting, because that's kind of how it started. One of the companies in Sweden.
No way.
They had a number. You called the person.
Yeah.
And then you wanted to put a bet on a horse.
Bookies, right?
Yes.
Oh, you call it bookie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So internet, when that came,
iGaming stuff.
obviously it opened up the possibilities for how you could gamble.
Yeah.
And how easily you could gamble. And it also grew certain verticals. I mean, as you can imagine, it was easier to go to a land-based casino.
Yeah.
But it maybe wasn't that easy to play esports. But then when online came, esports, lotteries became easier to play because now you don't need to just go to a physical shop.
Yeah.
Sports betting grew. So like sports betting is almost 40% now of the gambling industry because of online. So I started my trip basically when we went online, obviously.
Right, about 20 years ago.
Yeah, more or less. Oh yeah.
Wow.
2006.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
it's almost 20 years.
It's hard to think out 2006 is almost 20 years.
I think Apple just launched a sports app on which gambling is available, is it not?
Really?
I believe so. It was a big announcement that Apple launched their own sports
I'll
app.
fact check that later.
Yeah.
No, it did, but
Okay.
the idea is to open up towards access towards gambling. But because it's an Apple store, I believe you can restrict the access you get from different countries.
Not a lot of people know this. I don't think a lot of people know this, but Swedes, and you're born and brought up in Sweden, Swedes seem to dominate the online gambling world, particularly in Europe. And given how big Europe is and online gambling, it's almost globally. How did that happen? I mean,
that's a good question. I think it's a coincidence, but
like all good things,
like all good things, yeah. But I mean, yes, I mean there are a couple of people actually that are based from Sweden that started
Who are the OGs?
Yeah,
There's always a couple
really
of people,
the
right?
OGs
There's always a
that
couple of
actually
people.
started the whole
Yeah.
gambling stuff even before it went online.
Right.
So they took the land-based stuff and taking that into restaurants or bars.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So when you were going to a club, there was a roulette table or a blackjack table there.
Yeah.
So they started with those kind of initiatives. And then online happened,
Yeah.
and they understood the possibilities of online. So they actually went to certain jurisdictions such as Malta
Right.
and informed about, the possibilities around
Yeah.
gambling going online, becoming iGaming,
Yeah.
but we need a framework for it.
In creating the regulatory environment. And
Exactly. So Malta, probably
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
don't, I mean, Malta is one of the
Yeah.
biggest
No,
hubs that started with providing licenses.
That's definitely up there.
So it was really driven by a couple of Swedes.
Wow.
And that, when you start with that, then you have the people working with gambling. Then all of a sudden, if you want to start a gambling business, then you already have a lot of people in Sweden that knows
But what's
that industry.
interesting is that these are people who are entrepreneurs in that vertical, in that space, i.e. gambling, who are like, okay, we can now put this into a new form of offline restaurants, whatever, hotels, from probably standalone gambling venues. And then you go from that to a new space, i.e. the internet, and now maybe a new space, Web3.
Yes.
And it's kind of interesting. These are all domain experts. These aren't like internet guys who goes, oh, well, let's do that. These are actually people in the gambling industry.
It doesn't always happen like that. You're right. It's not always the incumbents that invent the electric car, right? It's an outsider that disrupts them.
Yeah, the horse and buggy guys, did they invent the electric car? No,
Not that I know of, actually. No,
they didn't. Yeah.
none of them McCord Ford. Very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting. Before we get going, we talk about building the business. Let's put some numbers around all of this. So, how big is the gambling market globally? If you had to put some numbers around it, then you could just subdivide it into, off that, how much is online, how much is Web3 now, and how is the outlook? Because obviously, we're all interested in the future, because the podcast is called Future Money.
It is.
So we want to talk about the future, not just what happened 20 years ago in Sweden, in some dark, remote city. Lovely Swedes, but why do you all gamble? I have nothing else to do. I mean,
You're gonna get. I'm going to Sweden pretty soon. You're gonna get me into trouble with this podcast.
what else do you do? It's dark and the mind boggles. But we'll let the audience fill it out in the comment section. What else do you do on dark nights in Sweden? But anyways, let's put some TAMs around it, right? Imagine this is your VC pitch.
So numbers, gambling industry, it's projecting towards $1 trillion industry by the end of the decade. Currently, it's around 700 billion, give or take.
Yeah.
And you will be surprised how big the online is.
How big is the online? God, I suspect you
want to
might
guess?
tell us.
500 billion.
No, come on. 700 is... People still go to Macau and Vegas, right?
So let's say 250.
I go for 150.
All right.
Okay, 100-ish.
Ah.
So around
got
12 to 15% is only online. And that's a big surprise for a lot of people.
That is a surprise.
You thought it would be bigger.
Absolutely, with the way apps are there. It seems
Exactly.
like it would be a lot
And the
more
things you hear about in the news is this online company, this online company, this online gaming provider. So everything you hear about is online, but it's still in the very early digitalization phase. So
Why are we so early? We're early.
Or slow.
I think
It's because people like doing it in person. Is that it?
I think it's still a social thing to go to a land-based casino.
Yeah.
You meet up with someone, you go and have a dinner, you might go to a casino and play.
Yeah.
But I think it's a generation thing now. The newer generations, like my kids, they are more or less born into everything being online.
Yeah.
While we have been part of two worlds.
Yeah, no, we
Like,
went
we
to cinemas, right? We went to physical cinemas before we went to streaming. And
Put a big $3,500 cinema on your face.
we went to cinemas, right? Got the popcorn.
Love them, man.
Yeah.
So I think that is one of the reasons. We're still in we are brought
We're
up
the
in a
transit
hybrid
generation.
world. Exactly.
Yeah, with the hybrid.
Best of both worlds.
hopefully, inshallah.
So I think online will actually. I mean, now if you say 12 to 15% is online, and we're projecting towards maybe $1 trillion. I mean, the numbers are saying $1 trillion by the end of the decade will be gambling, and out of that, around 20% will be online by the end of the decade.
Wow.
It's still relatively small, huh?
But
Total pie.
I think that projection is based on statistically how the growth has been. I think it will be a hockey stick with the new generation coming, because they're actually
more
born.
like to be above 20%.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then within that, talk to us about Web3 gambling. How much of that 200 do you think is going to be Web3? And linked to that is, why do we need Web3 gambling? Like,
Good
what's
question.
I mean, obviously you're building in Web3, but like, why do I need as a user Web3 gambling?
I think to address that question, you need to actually start by not talking about Web3.
Yeah.
Because it's not, people don't want technology.
Yeah.
Technology is something that solves something that people actually want, right?
Yeah.
So I think I always want to start off with that. People don't want
Technology.
they don't want database. They want things to be stored when they move devices, right? Databases happens to solve that.
You don't get up in the morning and grow up saying, I want a
Database.
this kind of database, or I want to use that cloud computing solution. No?
Not yet.
Okay.
So I think that's the first, like, to start off with.
Yes.
But then, I mean, if we look at the numbers, you had gambling offline.
Yeah.
Then you had online coming in late 90s.
Yeah.
And then you had this, and at that point, that's Web 1.
Yeah.
And then around 2000, you had Web 2, still being online.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, people can produce content.
Yeah.
Didn't affect gambling that much, but in general, you know, Instagram, YouTube, all those things started to bloom. And then now, in the era of Web 3, it started with crypto. So people had a lot of crypto.
Yeah.
So crypto casinos started to get introduced, because there was a lot of people having a lot of crypto, and
do something with these
you want to
coins
do
or
something with the tokens.
Yeah.
So, like, almost 10 years ago, crypto casinos started to get introduced. Yeah.
Wow.
Around 8-10 years ago.
So it's like the time of Silk Road and things like this, is that?
It's been a while.
Yeah. So it's really, really like.
It's been more than a minute.
Yeah.
So it started off, and then now the crypto casino. I mean, it's difficult to say exact numbers, but if you ask people in the industry, they will say the crypto casinos are around 20% of the iGaming.
Got it.
So 20% of 20%.
Yeah, 20% of the 100.
Yeah.
So if you say the global market is 700, online is 100, 20 is around the crypto. And if you look at the growth, you see the highest growth with the crypto casinos, where you have a much higher adoption. So that's how it starts, with people more betting with crypto.
Yeah.
But what comes with Web3 is more than just crypto, as you know. I mean, it's utilizing blockchain smart contracts to make things more transparent, trustless, and to decentralize. So I think it's a very, very interesting era we're going into, which gambling hasn't seen before.
I'm going to hand over to Gaurav so that he can grill you lightly about your entrepreneurial journey and the Web3 business you're building. But Gaurav, over to you.
Thanks so much. So like Ronan said, super curious and very interested to learn, how did you start? Because a lot of people who come on to watch our show and don't want to just know about the subject matter. They actually want to also hear from the individual or the team. Where did they start? How did they start? So when did you start? And how did you start? When did you decide to be an entrepreneur? Have you always been an entrepreneur? Or did you have a corporate job where you said, today I woke up, instead of looking at databases, I want to build a business, and that's how you took off. So tell us about that a little bit, if you don't mind. How did you start your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, no, I mean, in short, I would see myself being entrepreneur all the time, without maybe knowing about it. I started, as mentioned, within the gambling industry. That was just a coincidence.
So your first job was in the gambling industry?
Yeah, it just happened to be when I graduated. That's where I
You
started.
just fell into it.
Which part of it? Was it the accounting side? Was it the implementation
I was
side?
actually a developer.
He was on the tech, and
I was on the tech side, yeah.
So you started your first job out of university.
Exactly.
As
a developer.
And from university, were you a programmer as well, or?
I quite during the university, I needed more money because to be able to cope with those years.
Yeah.
So I started.
We all do.
We all.
And I saw that companies wanted websites.
Yes.
So I learned how to build websites. I started to sell websites. So I learned how to code, and then
Website builder.
And then I was selling websites.
Right.
And then when I graduated, I just happened that I took a developer profession. But that didn't long for a long time. I mean, it was like a couple of years. And then I realized that I liked everything around gambling. And I realized that I actually love sports betting and some casinos as well.
Yeah.
So that's basically how it started. And then I was into that corporate life, just working for a company. But in parallel, I always, started up a lot of businesses, not within gambling. But what happened then was, fast forwarding, I've been working on operator sides, so being involved in with the definition of our operator is basically where the end users go. So you go to Stake or you go to Betway or you go to Unibet or Betsson, that's where you go and play. So I've been working on those businesses as well, close to the end users. And then I've been also working at the provider end. So I've been working with companies like Canby, where you provide a sports book to these operators. So I've been in both worlds for quite a long time. And then it was actually when crypto started to come into play, where I realized that there is a big opportunity. And during my career, I saw that with the regulations coming, on certain markets, payments was such a big problem. Payments was a problem.
I have no comment.
Yeah. So
Do you know anything about payments?
So payments was a
The
problem.
second generation payment entrepreneur. I have no idea.
So you need to fix the payments.
I'm doing it 40 years. What's going on, man? Fix it, man. Fix it.
I'm on it. I'm on it.
Good.
So payments was a problem, and
Inside the iGaming world.
inside the iGaming world,
Right.
And crypto came,
Yeah.
and then I started to.
What was the trouble? What was the problem? Like, why the existing payment companies were like,
Was it cash? Was it collection? Was it data? What was it? Was it people weren't allowed to do it because of regulation? Yeah.
I mean, so it was market that wasn't. It was emerging market, still not regulated, and certain payment providers, they don't want you to use their services to put money into gambling.
Right. Yeah.
So end users wanted to use certain payment methods, but they were on and off.
Yeah.
So that was, from a user point of view, it was difficult to get money into buying a lottery ticket online, for instance, or playing casino or sports betting.
Yeah.
And secondly, these payment providers, they want a lot of, they have very high fees. So it's very, very costly for the operators to drive a business.
Yeah.
So it's a very challenging area with the payments. And then you have crypto coming with the challenge of not everybody having a wallet. But then I saw that if you have a wallet and if you have crypto, it's actually very smooth and a user-friendly experience.
So given the current ecosystem, there's a problem for the businesses and there's problems for users.
Yes.
Crypto adoption would be a default position because it's already something people would be willing to learn and adopt because the current ecosystem doesn't serve them well enough.
No, exactly.
Okay.
And which year is this? Like, when is it you're getting interested in the crypto side of
It's around
merging with casinos?
It's around 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Right. So around COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
This is your lockdown thing.
Perfect time to get behind a keyboard and monitor and code away and build.
And that was actually also when online got another bump, as you know. But that's not just for gambling.
No, everything.
All other
Everything
businesses
online.
out
Wallets, bank
All
accounts, digitization, front ends, enablements across everywhere. It had to happen, right?
Yeah, forced to sit at home.
Right. You had to build online, you had to work online, you had to deliver online. It was, So 3 years ago.
Yeah, so that's basically where I felt like, okay, I've done a lot of startups in parallel with my, normal being part of a corporation.
Yeah.
But that was the point where I realized, like,
Well, it was 4 years ago. 2024.
yeah, it's 4 years ago. Yeah.
It's
So-
March.
So I guess, what the interesting question then is, you take this idea 4 years ago and you say there's an opportunity. You have experience in the industry. You see problems that need...
Domain expertise, yeah.
You also understand that there is an upswing or an uptake or it's a growing space that you can capitalize on. So you start 4 years ago. Well, what did you start exactly 4 years ago? So you said, I see an opportunity. How did it start for you?
Well, it started with I wanted to look into how we could build a platform for crypto casinos. Because that's what I was interested in first and foremost.
So pure crypto casinos as opposed to casinos that wanted to adopt connectivity to crypto.
So basically traditional casinos that now accepts payments in crypto.
So it is enablement of existing.
So and since there were so many casinos out there already, we felt like, okay, let's build a platform to make it easier for operators who wants to operate as a crypto casino, make it as easy for them as possible. But then during that journey, I started to learn about there's more than just crypto. There's this Web3. And what is this Web3? And then I started to understand about the audience that are actually having crypto, their need of things being decentralized, the ownership question, the question of trust, transparency, and things being trustless. And for me, trustless, it was also a new thing. What is trustless actually? The need of not having to trust something.
Yeah, no middleman required.
Exactly.
It's transparent, it's audited.
And sometimes when you say things, it's trustless, some people see that as a negative thing.
Of course, because...
But it's actually positive that there's no need to trust.
Better to say no middleman.
No, exactly. So that's what happened. So I started to build a platform just for crypto casinos. But that only after like 2 years, I realized like, no, we need to think a bit further ahead.
So there's a dual opportunity.
Exactly. So then I started to think about like, okay, then that's basically where the idea of DeGaming, which I'm the co-founder of, started approximately 2 years ago.
It's a theme, right? We follow with all our other podcasts like Run It. When people are solving for a problem, the size of the market is larger than the queue. If technology truly can enable a shift, you create more opportunity than was previously thought of just a singular problem to solve, right? It's a recurring theme. It's clear here. You saw an issue to solve with DeGaming for the existing market. But then at the same time, there's a huge other opportunity or blooming or blossoming opportunity for the crypto Web3 ecosystem that's coming. Very interesting.
And just very prosaically, walk us through like the gaming idea or the idea of doing your own thing. Like, how did it emerge? Is it like one nice warm summer in Stockholm as it came up, or you were freezing, your bits and pieces off, and you were like shivering, like, I need to do something, or what was was a nice warm bath in the winter, or what was like
the switch?
The day.
The day, the moment. You were chatting to your wife or your friends, or
no, actually, it was when
you're sitting on Johan's boat in the Mediterranean.
No, it was actually when I understood that the Web3 community, they like owning stuff together. It's a community driven compared to Web2 when you're online by yourself. And if you look at like NFTs and all those kind of projects, it's a community always. And that was when I thought about, why can't a community own a game in the casino? Imagine how nice if the platform I'm building, you have games from different big providers like Evolution, NetEnt and whatnot. But imagine if the people could own a game. So you play in a game.
Wow,
If
house
you-
always wins as well. That's great.
And that's I'll come back to that comment as well. So that's how it started.
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
you know, people like playing and consuming, and they know the house wins. But whenever they're lucky, they will win. We're sure they win from the game. But when they lose, the community wins.
Wow, is that hedging your bets 101? Wow.
So that's how the idea started. And then very quickly I understood, like, okay, not just game, the whole platform. Why can't you own a piece of the operator? Right? So if you have an operating brand, why can't that brand be owned and driven by a community?
So you're really disrupting the origin of ownership and the distribution of wealth in this industry.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how things actually started to shift off. And then I got that into some deck and I started to present it around. And that's when I realized that I got it was 2022 and I got a lot of interest.
And did you get interest from the existing operators and casinos, or did you get them from people that wanted to invest in casinos but didn't get access before?
That's an interesting question, actually, because I got a lot of interest from people from Web3. Right? So they saw the opportunities because they started to compare this with how things in Web3 works, like DeFi's and all those things. But then I got a lot of interest from the pioneers from Sweden. That I have in my network. So when I started to present these ideas to them, and these are, you know, I always respect people that are seniors that have been in the industry for a long time. I respect the new, hungry 20-year-old guy. You know, that's one part. But the people with knowledge, you should never underestimate
It's
the
very
experience.
rare that, you know, it's that scenario. Either you're part of the solution, or you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because people stick with what they sort of know, as the circle turns.
Yeah.
Very few people that actually sit in the middle and recognize which part they are, part of the solution or part of the problem, and they say, okay, I'll spend more here in time and money in that other place. Very interesting.
So when I started presenting it to these pioneers, they said, this is so interesting, and the challenges you are facing with Web3 and blockchains and people not having crypto in wallets and whatnot, we faced the same problem when we went online at the end of 90s. I'm like, was it a problem? Of course, because
Setting up an
people
account.
said, they're like, money online, I have cash. How do I put money in a
Very
bank?
interesting. Very interesting.
So from them, they're like, what you're doing now could be the next phase of what we already went through.
These are the iGaming veterans.
These are when you got feedback like that, I'm like, okay, let's go all in on this one.
So all eggs in one basket. No hedging a corporate job and doing a side hustle anymore.
So 2022, it's like all in.
Yeah, so we got that, you know,
And
like a
DeGaming-
confirmation.
DeGaming means what?
Decentralized gaming.
It doesn't mean there's DGen.
Decentralized gaming.
DGen gaming, no. That's great.
And was this your first, I mean, you'd been in the gaming industry a long time, but had you built your own business before? This is your first one?
Not within gambling. I've been building businesses like startups in other areas.
Oh, really? Okay.
But within gambling, it started off.
So when you decide, okay, I want to do this, and you go and tell your family, look, I'm going to do this, what's the reaction?
I don't know.
No reaction, actually.
No reaction.
Because they've always seen me as the one who cannot sit still, just working at a 9 to 5.
Good. ADHD, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the biggest thing I heard was, you really want to go towards an unsafe environment where you can't provide, you know, what's needed for your family.
The stability part of it.
The stability part
Not
of
the
it.
fact that it was gambling.
No.
No, but the same thing, right? You're gambling with your, you know, at the time you had an 8-year-old, right? She's 10 now.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
So
you were gambling with your 8-year-old's future, right?
Yeah.
College fees up, college fees down.
Sweden, their college fees.
Oh, that's right.
You know, college fees in Sweden. Pay 55% tax.
I don't know if they want. You might want to send her to Rosé. You never know.
Still happen.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think so. The major thing was stability, and obviously from the family saying that I mean, why do you put yourself through this?
Why? Yeah.
Why? You could just have a really good job and just 9 to 5,
nice
but why do you put yourself through this? Yeah.
Job,
But for me, it's like this is where fun is.
Well, why do you? This is where fun is.
This is where fun is. And that's something that I've been taught like for the past years.
Yeah.
I started to write diaries.
Okay.
So obviously you write stuff when you're feeling in a bad mood, because when you run into challenges, when you're in a good mood and things go well, you don't get the time to write things down. You just celebrate. So when I look through my notes, I just find the challenging times. But then when I review them, I'm like, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I was, because that put me into a position I needed to solve. So that's the fun. And when you solve problems, you actually build value in your company, because the problems you solve becomes the aggregated value of your company.
Does this sound like fun? It sounds like pain, right? You're inflicting pain on yourself, and
entrepreneurs have a very large propensity for the tough life.
The tough life.
And seeing the positive in a lot of things, because it really is a long game. You know, you have all these sayings, right? It's 7 years to be an overnight success. Because everyone sees you when you're successful. You know, it's just a very tough process. So, and that's also why previously I've said very clearly, people discover very quickly in the first 3 years whether they really are entrepreneurs or they're employees. You really, you know.
And Emil, you're sure you're an entrepreneur, not an employee?
I think so. I think I'm an entrepreneur.
You think you're an entrepreneur? Yeah. And what makes you sure?
Because I need the journey. I need to be. I can't wake up and be just certain about things that just will happen. I like the uncertainties. I like the challenges. But that's a personality thing, right?
It is. So Bon Jovi, living on the edge.
So that's that, and then being in gambling for 20 years, and then internet evolving towards Web3. You can see those things happening.
Take a chance on me.
Well, yes, I have a more contextual point for sure. Well done. Well played. Well played. This is like
that could be the theme music. We'll have to get the producers to weave that in.
This is like a countdown podcast. It is. But gambling as an industry, you know, from a technology perspective, it sounds like there's so much to go. But from an industry itself, it feels like, because it's a very, how do I say it politely, a very tough industry that has a unique color to it, if I'm being polite on the terminologies and aspects of it. Do you face a lot of invisible obstacles in bringing disruption? Because like we've talked about, they're incumbents. And yes, you have visionaries from Sweden that are thinking of being part of you and your journey as well, not just their own brand. But what about the rest of Europe, the rest of the world? Are people as welcoming to this disruption or displacement of casino or gambling ownership from the structure point of view? Because if you sort of power back to the people kind of scenario, putting it in a very, very, very loose manner as opposed to drilling down into it more, you're facing a lot of invisible pushback?
I mean, I think from the industry in general, they like how it is now, because they're in control now.
That's exactly my point.
But the communities and the people, if you talk with players, or if you talk with the Web3 community, they are just been waiting for an opportunity like this. So for the players, that's basically where it all starts, because they are the one that puts the money into the business.
You know what this reminds me of a little bit? It reminds me of Reddit and GameStop and Wall Street Bets. It's where, because you had platforms like eToro that allowed you to buy shares without going through a broker, digital online enablement for people to do this, that you could have a forum like Reddit where people would come through and you had information sharing and the enablement of quick adoption of action. Where information is real time, it's moving quickly, people can take action, and in fractional, the sum of it can have a large effect. And like that, you have Discord, you have crypto, you have access to accounts moving money, and then you have this, where people are buying into this ecosystem story, where this disruption can happen. So like on one side you have it there, it sounds like you're you're the conduit to make this happen between players
Yeah.
and new owners, which almost are merging.
Exactly.
Which is very interesting.
And that's actually, when you talk about challenges, that's a challenge we are seeing now, because when we speak with current operators, they're feeling we will be losing a lot of control now, because the players come to us, they deposit to us.
Exactly.
When they win, we control whether or not we can afford paying them immediately, or we need to wait for a couple of days because we need winnings from others to be able to
You're
exactly.
You're disrupting. It's a cliche disruption, but you're disrupting their model, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, and for us, I would see ourselves redefining what an operator is. For us, an operator, it's a marketeer. You're good at acquiring players or getting your community engaged, and you're good at retaining them. You have your Telegram community or whatnot.
Discord, everything.
Exactly. That's an operator. And we want to take everything else off from the operator. So the operator can actually be a marketeer, can be the player. Right? And we do that by taking Web3 elements into the game. So like we have something we call gaming liquidity services. So we have liquidity pools as a service to the operators or the marketeers, where we say you can run a business, you have a community, you want to engage, they want to play on live blackjack or a slot machine. We have pools of liquidity. You can connect to that and provide gameplay to your audience. Or you need the games, we have the game providers as well connected to that pools. Well, who's taking the risk? Well, the liquidity providers are the house. So they get the yield from the money they invest. All of a sudden, we have created a platform and an infrastructure that allows players to go to an operator that doesn't need to take the risk of owning the bankroll. You are opening up for liquidity providers to put money into the industry, and things are on Web3, meaning it's transparent and open and fast. So as a player, you can now go to an operator and see this operator is connected to a bankroll which has this amount of money. So I can see if they can afford paying me if I win.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the allure of the gambling in person at a casino and a physical and a social element won't be replaced. I think it's the creation of a new space that's maybe happening where the opportunities are great, but there's a lot of traditional casino elements which you can still take away from even the physical aspect. So if I go to gamble at a casino with my wallet and the services are still moving to this point of pools of liquidity, I can still service the traditional physical spaces with Web3 solutions as well as the new space.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And I think you really need to see these elements as fundamental infrastructure blocks. So payments and connecting with wallets, those things just works. And then we try to put iGaming as a layer on top instead, where you don't need to think about money movement.
You know, payment infrastructure is one thing, right? But how's gambling infrastructure for licenses? I mean, on the one side, we've seen so much in licensing and regulation shifting or trying to catch up to technology, which will never be the case, but it's trying very heavily in our region, Middle East, Africa, and elsewhere, where regulation is trying to catch up with technology to service the market. What are you seeing? The gambling regulation, are they very positive? Are they very quick? What's happening in gambling regulation? We have talked.
We're talking about in Europe?
Yeah, of course, in Europe. I mean,
And also, obviously, there's an emerging angle here as well.
yes, there is.
It's historically not been official, but now it's becoming. It's coming.
I've no clue on gambling regulation. Do you know much about it?
I'm not really an expert on gambling, so
What's the gambling regulation?
Well, I can't say I'm an expert in that field, but what you can see is that obviously,
Maltese lawyers.
well, obviously what you do see is that you first have the Maltese regulation, and you have similar ones like Curacao, Isle of Man. Those are like global licensing frameworks. What have happened for the past like 10 years now is you have local regulations. You have the Swedish regulation, UK regulation. Those regulations are very much focusing on making sure to protect their country and sorry?
The consumer.
Exactly. Now with the speed of Web3 and the technologies, regulations for Web3 is so slow, but the discussions are out there already. But it's not coming from the local regulators.
Sure.
It's another Maltese 2.0 coming up, where new global regulatory frameworks are seeing the opportunities of online going towards Web3. There needs to be a very specific license to handle that new technology, where things are, there's a huge opportunity. People see things transacting with wallets and on-chain being anonymous and not good. But you could see the other way around because everything is transparent. You can see this wallet that is now playing where it has been connected since it started, right? So that requires its own framework as we see it.
Malta 2.0 is going to be where? Or everywhere? Maybe it's...
That's the big question. We don't know where it will be, but there are some discussions with some jurisdictions hoping to be able to educate them and try to... I think that's the challenge. Get them to understand why Web3. Because they're like, why don't you just use Web 2? I mean, Web 2...
Does it?
I don't know. Does Malta itself become Malta 2.0 or is it...
we don't know.
We don't know.
Maybe.
To be seen, maybe discussed in another episode.
Yeah,
we all have our ideas of where it could be.
I mean,
it could be here,
Ara,
it could be there.
everything else, and
let's see, right?
we don't know.
Let's not throw
that out there. No.
Yeah. There's things happening. Right? That's all we can say. There's things
You
happening.
didn't say it; they were announced. I mean,
Yeah,
published.
Yeah. I think our audience needs to tune in again in a few months' time to find out what happened.
What a hook!
What happened next? As we sort of draw this conversation, which has been fascinating, we sort of draw it to a close, Emil. Let's do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. So for you personally as an entrepreneur, what does good look like? What would you say, like, you sit down with your friends, your family, go, yeah, that worked. Or what does good look like? And talk through the journey you see coming in the next couple of years. And, and also, of course, how you're going to make yourself and all your investors huge amounts of money. Right?
I think, to be just open here, I don't think I will ever end up in a position where I feel like, now this was good. I think I will always be trying to find new challenges.
Another mountain somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. As they say, the top of one mountain is the bottom of another one, or the next one, right? So,
I'm fatigued already.
but I think from within this topic of gambling, I would be really working towards creating an infrastructure where things are much better for the end users.
Yeah.
So things such as transparency, things as like gambling today, it's really, a lot of people sees gambling as something really, really bad. And it's bad because you're paying money, you're playing, and then when you win, you're not getting your money. It's taking a lot of time to get money. If you have huge winnings, sometimes you don't even get your winnings. That puts a really bad stamp on the industry. But if things are really transparent, you have liquidity providers taking the house risk, but there's a mathematical probability of you winning, so they understand that risk. You have players coming into this field where things are transparent. They don't choose an operator based on whether or not they have the probability to pay you. They choose it because it's a brand. You choose Apple because of Apple, and you choose Nike because of Nike, and Adidas because of Adidas. Maybe the products are the same. So for me, that would be a success. To make sure we have a new iGaming definition. So when people play that in that new area, they will say, how could someone even play on a casino and you didn't know how big the bankroll was?
How could you not use an iPhone, right?
Exactly.
Even though it might be.
So I think for me, that's realistic before I feel like, okay, I've done my part in gambling.
Right. How can you not be using DeGaming or
Exactly.
Emil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Super interesting.
If the audience who are listening want to learn more about you, DeGaming, what's the best way for them to find out more about what you're up to?
I would say follow us on Twitter, Telegram, to stay up to date with all the exciting things that's happening.
Okay.
And do you run a Discord or a website as well?
Yeah, we have a website, thegaming.io, and then we are active on Twitter and Telegram.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the Fumo Podcast, thank you so much for joining, and thank you to all our supporters, of course, the audience, most of all, and our producers at CFT. Big shout out to XVC Tech for sponsoring this, and of course, MFTA for being our community partners. Thank you so much.